Hey everyone, welcome back to the Offshore Explorer podcast, episode 5. Um, just hope everyone out there is safe, sane, and healthy. Getting through the first month of quarantine with no end in sight. Um, but today I am joined by Michael Fowlkes, executive producer of Inside Sportfishing, great friend, tuna club member. Uh, Big time antique tackle collector. Guy has the most mental collection of antique tackle you guys have ever seen. Um, in his home office, it's absolutely insane. Like all this old school mounts and tackle and lures, really killer stuff. But Mike joins me today, and we talk about the Inside Sport Fishing show that he produced for about 20 years and his new project, the History of Sportfishing, which is really cool. And we talk about his swordfish exploits last year and how he was part of the um, bonanza that really got everyone fired up for deep dropping and was one of the first guys to have success last year and kind of put the deep dropping on everyone's radar as an effective method for catching swordfish in SoCal. And we talk about that. Um, the guy is an epic storyteller, and it's fun just to talk fishing while we're all hunkered down at home right now. And hopefully, there will be some light at the end of the tunnel soon, and we can all get back out there and be fishing. Hope you enjoy and stay safe and take care. All right. Welcome back to the Offshore Explorer. I'm your host, Chase Offield, and recording remotely today with Michael Fowlkes, executive producer of Inside Sportfishing, fellow Tuna Club member, and excellent fisherman. Great guy, great friend. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Hey, Chase, how are you, sir?
Good to hear your voice.
You too.
Hopefully you're staying sane and safe in quarantine and um, you know, working on your show and some other stuff, other projects I know you got going on. And how's everything going?
Good, good. I've been just hunkered down here for the last 6 weeks, which has really been a blessing in disguise. It's given me an opportunity to get into a bunch of old shows and kind of put some attention to our YouTube channel there at Inside Sport Fishing and sort of freshen that up. It's been fun seeing some of this old stuff. And just wanted to thank you for having me on, Chase. It's an honor.
Well, I appreciate you agreeing to do this. It's been fun seeing, as a kid, I used to, be a big fan of your show, and I know I think you recorded a couple episodes with my dad.
You did. Mag Bay.
Mag Bay, yeah,
Yep.
and on his boat, biz back in the VHS days or VHF days or VHS.
VHS. VHS. Yep.
We had
Camcorders.
we had a whole box, of all your different movies, and I can still remember some of my favorite ones. The long range party boat ones where they go down to like the Revigahalo. Yep,
Yep.
I love those ones, and yeah, it's been fun seeing that stuff. You reposting some of that stuff. What's what? Give me the quick uh, synopsis on when did you start Inside Sport Fishing, and then when did you finish up that show, or what's kind of like the brief history of Inside Sport Fishing?
Well, we started it. I launched it in 1989, and I'll never forget it. I wrote a letter to Toyo Shimano and said, "I'm want to start this fishing show. Would you guys be interested in getting involved?" And he wrote me back just a green pen across the bottom of the letter that said, "Involvement usually has the word green attached. What did you have in mind?" So I still have that letter to this day. And I went in, met with him, and told him what I wanted to do, and he said, "We're in." So They jumped in. Shimano jumped in with me at the get-go from in 1989 and was our lead sponsor all the way through until a few years ago when we pulled it off the air for a while. And between them and Ford, they were pretty much it, which was really a blessing because I'm not real good at business and negotiations and all that stuff. So I just had two really good, loyal sponsors that I was very proud of. And they got a new marketing director over at Ford after about 10 years. And he said, we need an agreement or something. Do you have a contract? And I said, no, we've just had a handshake for 10 years. And he goes, are you kidding me? We're doing $1 million worth of business and on a handshake. And I said,
Yeah.
yep. So, it was just a real good relationship that we had and still do. It's just, I needed a break. And they had new marketing directors at both Ford and Shimano 4 years ago, and they all wanted Facebook. They all wanted digital media. They didn't want TV anymore. So they said, bring me a way to advertise in the social media arena. And it still is. It's the Wild West. Nobody's really sure what works, what doesn't work, how to track it. So I went out and tried to create a fishing app. I just wanted to be able to sit here and if someone caught a marlin or a white sea bass or a yellowtail or a bluefin or something, I wanted to know when, where, and how they caught it. And I wanted to be notified right away. So we tried to build this app that was like up to the minute fish reporting. And the guys that really needed to report were the sport boats. And they weren't that excited about giving away current dope.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, if you built us a reservation system, we need a good new reservation system. Then we'll be happy to give you the report. So I spent the last couple of years with some technology people trying to build a reservation system for the boats called Core. We beta tested it with the Vagabond. Mike Lackey's been real happy with it, but the problem is it's a technology and it's an arena that I don't know anything about. So I've had to rely on all these code guys and guys that write a language that I'll never understand. And it just was so frustrating. So just a few months ago, I've kind of decided I want to get back to doing what I do best, and that's telling stories with pictures.
So, I know, guys that like me that fish and grew up watching fishing shows like Inside Sportfishing and, Spanish Fly and, all the guys on ESPN at the crack of dawn early in the morning,
Yep.
The dream growing up was like, oh man, I want to have my own fishing show. Like that seemed like the dream job, and I think it's a lot more difficult, or it was a lot more difficult to get that sort of thing on TV in the 80s, 90s when you were doing it. Now obviously anyone can start their own YouTube channel or social media, which is great. The barrier of entry is small, but how did you go from the idea of wanting to do a West Coast based fishing show when it was all predominantly East Coast, and what was your background that led you to think that you could get this thing off the ground and then actually getting it on the air and what was on the TV for almost 20 years? I mean, what led you to starting it and having the confidence that you could do it?
I think ignorance would be the first word. I had no idea what couldn't be done. I just had this dream of doing a fishing show. I love. I went through film school. I actually taught at Orange Coast College filmmaking for a while and worked up in LA, Showtime, HBO, Paramount. Did a lot of big productions with Gallagher, Disney, and they were big, 250 man sets and crews and, months worth of preparation for a 2-hour special live show. And it was grueling. And one day I'm driving home and I'm wheel high to an axle of a semi truck stuck in the freeway, just breathing the exhaust, thinking, man, this is my life. I keep dreaming about being on the water. I keep dreaming about fishing. I keep dreaming about, running my own charter boat. My reality is I'm sitting here on the freeway, wheel high to an axle, sucking in smog.
Mm-hmm.
So I finally just decided to step out and get back to what I love to do. And that was fishing and filming. And I ran a charter boat for a couple of years and couldn't make that work. we were the highest grossing 6-pack boat in San Diego for the 2 years I ran the boat. But at the end of the 2 seasons, I was like $40,000-$50,000 upside down with fuel and bait bills. So
That's tough.
that's when it was brutal. I don't to this day, I don't know how these guys do it. I don't know how the 6-pack guys do it. Sport boats even today are tough, but at least they had the volume. They were carrying enough passengers that they could help offset the cost of running a small boat. And
Right.
The expenses of running a boat are astronomical, and what you see is just a fraction of what it takes. So
Right.
I tip my hat. I have the highest respect for the owner operators out there. And the fact that they're doing it today and continuing to do it when the price of fuel has gone from 19 cents a gallon to what, $4. So, and you're still burning the same amount of fuel. So,
right.
Anyway, I've always been a storyteller. That's what I do best. And I've always let the sport of fishing and the fish be the star of our show. It's the focus of the entire show. It's not about me or a personality, it's all about the sport, and try to honor that sport by giving it the best possible coverage we can, and let the pictures tell the story. So
yeah, one of the things that I think, it always your shows were always differentiated from the East Coast shows. Just, you were able to capture, like, the style of West Coast fishing, just the grittiness of it. That's it's just so much different than the East Coast, Florida style of fishing. And I think you did a good job, maybe because a lot of your shows, were on the long range boats or on party boats, a lot more fishing with the, kind of like the everyman. And I think you did a great job of, capturing the essence of that. And I don't know, I think you probably built up a loyal following of West Coast guys. We're the only West Coast fishing show that was kind of mainstream, at least. You know, that's like at least how it seemed to me growing up.
Well, it's like I said. I mean, I deckhand. I started working on the Westerner out in Newport there at Davies Locker number 2, and I was 9 years old, and I've always just worshipped the ground that these guys walked on. I remember the first time I got invited up to stand in a wheelhouse. I mean, I was just shaking. I mean, those guys run an operation. They run a city basically that's floating with passengers and equipment, and it's amazing how hard these guys work, and yet they get out there and catch fish every single day. So I've got the highest respect for our operators out here on the West Coast. And the Pacific's a whole lot different world than anywhere else. I mean, we fish live bait. Our live bait fishery is so different than anywhere else in the world, and we have water conditions that are unmatched, except possibly up there at the Bering Sea. But you couldn't pay me to go film for those guys.
Yeah.
But we've done some shows from the East Coast and from the Gulf and in Louisiana, and it's generally it's grease calm water, and it's shallow, and it's you're running 60 miles to get to a ledge. It's just a different mentality that we have out here, and to be able to get on a boat and capture that experience in a way that conveys the experience to the viewer has always been my number one goal. Is like try to put the person there on the boat with us. And
when you were making those shows, like on the long range trips and whatnot, and going down the ridge, were you kind of operating, like, was it just you and a cameraman, or were you filming and doing it all yourself, or what was your operation like?
You're talking to it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh yeah, I was it, man. Lock, stock, and barrel. There was an occasion when I'd get like Cleet Takahashi or Bill Wilson or one of the guys would be able to join me for a couple of weeks and do some underwater work, which always, our goal is to try to get really good underwater shots. But and it's difficult. It's putting a diver in the water off a sport boat was a stretch to begin with. But 90% of the 95% of the photography was all mine. The last few years after I got sick, your dad and I both got sick at the same time, and bless his heart, man, he was one of the most loved and respected people I've ever met in my life. Still get choked up thinking about him. He's just, you're a chip off the block, you and your brother both. So it gives me chills. But anyway, it was a lot of work, and it's hard to say. It's been an honor to have been able to to make a living filming fishing.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of it, how many roughly how many episodes did you crank out? And that's
it's
been
it's
quite a few.
it's funny you should ask. We're in the process right now. I'm working with a gentleman up in LA who runs a large large film distribution company up there. He told me yesterday they did a $898 million in business last year. $898 million in revenues distributing films. And
Wow.
so he knows the distribution business as well as any man alive. And he loves the series. He really loves the series. And so we're basically going in and we're going to start with the most recent products, our most recent shows, and then work backwards in a retro progression
Okay.
back hopefully all the way to the very first episodes and the long range episodes, pulling the commercials, the billboards, all the fluff out of them and keeping them real tight.
Cool. Yeah, I think man, in just the last month and a half, I think the way people being forced inside and
Yep.
the content that's on the internet, and people are just watching everything that there is and devouring content. And when you're locked inside, I've started watching a lot of like fishing stuff and hunting stuff, and
Yep.
I've been watching a lot of elk shed hunting. I don't know like how I stumbled upon on that on YouTube, but like that's been my new thing, is watching these guys finding elk sheds. It's actually really interesting. It probably sounds stupid, but
Not at all. You had Ryan on there a couple of weeks,
yeah,
and he's one of the best at it there is.
yeah, I know, and
Vermejo, jeez,
it's a cool thing, and
so cool.
when you're locked inside and most people can't fish. Most people don't have their own boats. They rely on going out on party boats or with friends, and so fishing's been kind of canceled more or less. And then
Pretty much
it's like we're springtime now, and this is when everyone generally is starting to dust off their fishing equipment and go chase a sea bass or yellowtail.
Sea bass fever. Yep.
So I think guys, for me personally at least, is watching a lot of fishing and surfing and different anything like ocean related, just because I'm craving being out there. And I think when I saw your stuff coming online, it's great. It's like the more the better. I think the more that you can get on TV right now while we're all locked in
Hunkered down. Yep.
I think it's a good idea.
Well, thanks. It's been real satisfying for me because I wasn't sure. I didn't know if guys wanted to watch this old stuff or not, or this retro stuff. But man, the feedback and the comments have been off the charts. People are just 100% approval, likes and likes and likes, and so everybody's saying keep it coming. So we're doing the best we can to pull all the junk out and just give it straight dope. So it's fun. It's been fun for me to go back and see some of this stuff because once I produced it, generally I wouldn't look at it again. So
Really?
the stuff that we did, I got some stuff that we did 25 years ago that Tommy Roth, we talking about how to hook a mackerel or a salami and why. Where do you put the hook and what are the reasons for putting that hook in the nose or behind the anal fins or on his back, and he goes through it all. And it's 25 years old. It's as pertinent today as it was 25 years ago. So it's kind of fun seeing how much things change and yet how much fishing remains the same.
That's a great point, because I'm just laughing to myself when you were telling that story, because when I was talking with Chuggy and Scooch a couple weeks ago, we were talking about sea bass and methods for sea bass fishing, and year by year there's always a hot new thing. It's whatever it may be, but it's fishing. The fish are the fish. The fish still are out there looking for bait, and it's the tried and true methods that are always the fallback. And I think a guy like Tommy showing you how to hook a mackerel, like that sort of information is absolutely pertinent now. And I think, you know, what do guys do that are like new to get into fishing? I mean, it's so daunting if you didn't grow up with it like we did, and they go to YouTube. It's like with this deep drop thing.
Yep.
Everyone
Yep.
learned how to deep drop by watching YouTube videos of the guys in the Gulf and on the East Coast do it. So putting that stuff, your West Coast tuna fishing and um, all that sort of live bait fishing. I think there's some incredible info in there for guys that's still good today.
There really is, Chase. Absolutely. I've got one coming up with Frank Lopresti and Randy Tresant, and they talk about casting off a sport boat, techniques, why, when, and where, how to do it, how to get your bait. Just simple, basic, fundamental skills that a lot of guys don't know. And if you're not aware of them, when you get into that, let's say an albacore bite or a flurry of tuna on the corner, if you're stumbling around and not set, you're going to miss that opportunity. So it's the little subtle things that really make a difference. Especially fishing tuna, because you know how fickle they can be. If they're not foaming around the boat, you've got to work at getting bit. And the subtleties are really what separate the 10% of the guys that catch 90% of the fish on those boats. And having men like Frank and Randy take the time to teach us how to do it the right way. It's like Frank says, you're a ball player. You don't just show up the day of the game and think you're going to pitch a no hitter. You're out there practicing. You're throwing the ball. You're working at your trade before you step into the arena. And I think most of us neglect to do that. We spend a lot of time with our tackle and mess around with it, but practice knots or whatever. But actually putting on a little 3-ounce piece of plastic and pretending you're flipping an anchovy or a light sardine, off the back of your pickup truck. It really helps. Little tips, wetting the line and things like that. So it's been fun. It's been fun going back and pulling some of these old retro shows out. And like I said, the information they're presenting is like you said, fish are fish, and they're gonna resort to the basics. And we all seem to get back to those basics after we've tried the latest trends. So
Yeah, I think and another aspect of that is I think it's hard for guys that are new to fishing to ask other
for
guys that
help,
are for help, and you don't want to sound like like a kook or
yep, like
like a noob
yeah,
or whatever. Guys that fish are macho. It's like I don't want to
yeah.
I don't want to ask this guy how do I do a set up
How
a
to
rig.
tie a bimini, right, or how to tie a San Diego knot. I don't want to
Yeah,
get on a boat and I'll buy my rent rod and have them tie it.
or like guys that are getting into bluefin, like the whole kite kite fishing, flying fish, and rigging the flying fish. It's like everyone's got a new way, but luckily now
Technique.
you can go on to YouTube in the privacy of your own home and watch 10 different methods on how to rig a flying fish or how to
Yep.
get your kite rod set up and the balloon
Yep.
taped down to the kite, and what's the best type of kite. And to me that's good. Like I'm all for promoting fishing. It's a healthy, great way to be outside, and I think that if that gets more guys fishing, that's great. Obviously, like we all there's a lot of like unwritten rules in fishing, that guys just the only way you can learn is to be out there. But I think it's nice having all that information on the web for guys to kind of pick up.
It gave us an opportunity to get our first swordfish. We didn't have a clue. We were watching the videos from, booby trap or mouse trappers, and then the guys from New Zealand, and just trying to pick bits and pieces that would work for us, and putting all that together. And I love it. I mean, it's like Jimmy Kingsmill said, 2 things have changed fishing here in the last few years: helium and lead weights.
Honestly, Yeah. Who would have thought, rebar and helium would
Yep.
be, essential fishing tools. If you would have told someone 10 years ago,
Nope.
they would have just been like, what are you talking about?
Yep. Helium and lead weights. Yep. Rebarb. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just, but like we said, the more it changes, the more it stays the same. It's really just a matter of getting your bait, making your presentation, and making a presentation that's going to entice a fish to bite. To me, that's the essence of the sport. It's that bite. It's that moment when everything you've worked for, everything you've tried to do culminates in a strike. And having the rod in your hand or be watching the tip of that rod when the swordfish bites it. It just, there's nothing in the world that comes close to it. I feel sorry for people that don't fish because they really miss an opportunity to have an experience that's unparalleled with anything else in the world that I've ever seen.
So maybe you could let us relive your experience with deep drop. I think you were one of the guys that really was part of the main reason that the deep drop boom started last year. With your success, got everyone on notice. Like, holy shit! Like this is happening. This is working.
Yeah.
It was like
Yep.
prime time in the summer. It was like you put it on everyone's radar, and it just was led to the cascade that it was. And by October, we had 40 boats fishing 10 miles off Newport, deep dropping. So can you walk me through like the whole process from beginning to catching that first sword, like how that worked for you?
Yeah. Absolutely, Chase. I want to make sure and give credit where credit's due. Tom Rogers, who owns Woodhill Firewood out here, he's been a rancher his whole life. He's my fishing partner, and he's the one that did most of the research. He was the one that was really involved in trying to get this thing into a system that we could try. We tried it 10 years ago, Tom and I did, and all we ended up with was, getting picked off by the giant squid and stuff. There's just so much clutter down there, we couldn't get any fish. So
Mm-hmm.
we did it 10 years ago for no avail, and then we decided to try it again, and he got us all buttoned up, and Bobby Lee over in Avalon and Mike Cassidy were a couple of local guys fishing out of their skiffs, and I'd be sitting there on the boat, and next thing I know, they'd go motor and by at 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning and wave at us and come back 2 hours later and they have a swordfish on their skiff. And I'm just going, oh my God, what are you guys doing? And they're going, we got lucky. And about the third day in a row, I finally just said, come on, you got to show me what's going on. So I went out with Bobby Lee, and he took me up to past Long Point there, and we did a deep drop, and he kind of showed me what he was doing. We didn't get bit, but I got a good idea of what was going on, how they were doing it. So Tom Rogers kind of perfected the idea, and Tom and I went out for a 3 or 4 day trip, and we spent the first day on the backside of the island. It got sloppy. We went around to the east end and went down and out to the Avalon bank and doing all the hot spots and not having any luck at all. So the next day we went in, and that night I was talking to Tom, and I said, Tom, I want to try this spot here out in front. And he goes, what are you talking about? And I said, well, Pelakia last year, their largest fish of the season, I think, was 400 and some pounds dressed. Mm-hmm. And when they opened it up, she was just full of sand dabs. That's all she had, belly full of sand dabs. And I said, the best sand dab fishing I know of is right here in front of Avalon.
No, you're kidding.
No, and he goes, you're out of your mind. And I said, no, listen, Tom, think about it. I mean, that fish was full of sand dabs, and the best sand dab grounds that I know of in the world are right here in front of Avalon. He goes, you're out of your mind. I said, let's try it. And he goes, you're wasting your time. He goes, it's your boat. Do what you want. He was pissed. So we motor out a couple miles in front of Avalon. And I said, okay. And he goes, oh, he was like shaking his head. We dropped down, and within probably 15 minutes, the rod tip, and we're looking at each other and we're going, that's a bite. And he goes, I don't know. So he's winding it up, dropping it down, winding it up, dropping it down. Everything goes slack. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. And we had a swordfish. Everything just went slack.
Yeah.
So I'm winding. I said, there's something on here. I can't tell what it is, but there's something here. And winding. The next thing I know, the rod's starting to load up, and I'm going, man, there's a fish on here. And we had no idea what it was. And so we got her up, came to the surface, and when she came out of the water the first time, it looked like a Titan missile coming out of the water. It actually scared me. The fish was so big, it just went, holy crap, we need a bigger boat. And so those fish, those fish will make you pay for every single mistake you make.
Mm-hmm.
And we made every mistake in the book, including using rubber bands that were too thick. So when we rubber band the strobe lights on,
Mm-hmm.
we got to the rod tip, and I couldn't wind anymore because the light wouldn't go through the roller, the tip, and the rubber band wouldn't break, and the fish was going right along the side of the boat, and I couldn't pull to get her up to where we get a stick in her. So we lost that opportunity, and a half hour later she came up again, and I got her up to the leader, and I got the leader on the reel, and didn't think to put the leader, put the reel in full, and I let her pull the leader off, and the line finally snapped after about, I don't know, 2 hours, 2.5 hours or something. But it didn't matter to me. I was so thrilled to have actually hooked a swordfish. I was 0 for 43 on surface presentations in my life. I'd presented 43 baits to swordfish surface fin and never gotten a bite. So I was just thrilled to death to have gone out, had an idea about fishing the grounds there right in front, a couple miles in front of Avalon on the sandbanks there, and actually getting bit and seeing the fish come up and having an opportunity to do battle with the gladiators of the sea. They are the most amazing fish I've ever fished, caught, fought in my life. Nothing else I've ever, we've had 500,000, we had 1,000-pound marlin at the Great Barrier Reef. We've had 500-pound blacks and blues, and there's nothing I've ever fought, big tunas, 300-pound tunas, nothing that I've ever fought is anything like a swordfish. The problem I'm thinking, though, Chase, is that when these guys are coming up from 1,000, 1,200 feet, they're just, to me, it would remind me of going to a matinee on a hot Sunday afternoon, sunny. You walk out of a theater and you can't see. You're just blinded by the sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what happens is these fish are coming up from such deep compression zones that when they hit the surface, they're completely disorientated. They're just completely disorientated. And really, Bobby and those guys over at Catalina have said, look, when that fish comes up, you got one shot. You get them when they come up because they're disorientated, and you stick them. Otherwise, you're in for a battle of your life. And I know the guys that are fishing the buoys, they're bringing them up and putting a dart in them and then throwing the gear off and just letting them go wear themselves out rather than trying to gaff them when they first come up because they're so green.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, it was a fish of my lifetime. And I think the problem was that we were fishing right there 2-3 miles out in front of Avalon. And the day we got hooked up was a pre-fish, I think, for the Masters. I can't remember exactly. I think it was a day that everyone is out pre-fishing for the Masters. And so the buzz got around that we were right in the middle of a bite, and it turned out to be a swordfish. And nobody really knew anything about it other than that we'd had a swordfish on. And the next day, small craft warnings came in, so we spent the day in Avalon, went into the market and went shopping. I think Gracie had her nails done. About 3:00, we're sitting there in the morning and looked at each other and say, well, the wind's dying down. Let's go give it a shot. And we went back out, and another 5 minutes later, we were bit again. So I think that second fish was the one that sort of set the avalanche in gear.
When I, through the grapevine, I heard about it. Somebody, I don't even remember, texted me or called me and told me the story about you. I was like, wait, what? Like, tell me that again. Like,
yeah,
he got one and he lost it, and he got one the next day. Like, I mean, you know how it is around here. Like, word travels fast through the, the coconut wireless or whatever you call it. But, I think what month was that? Was that August or September?
August. It was August 15th, 17th, 18th, somewhere in there, the 20th of August, right around tournament time.
Yeah. So Masters is in September. So whatever it was. And I remember that word traveled fast. And I think within a few days,
I think it was the benefit.
Yeah, that's probably what it was. Yeah.
Weekend. That was the weekend of the benefit.
Yep. So, you got guys out there, and man, that I think right after that was it started.
Exploded.
Yeah.
Exploded.
And, who would have thought, within a month of that every guy out here that marlin fishes or offshore fishes would be watching YouTube videos on how to rig a squid, and a lot of guys had success. I think there was, I know lots of guys that caught swordfish last year, and we'd gone years without a swordfish caught, and
Gone my whole life without catching one.
and then all of a sudden it was like everyone was catching one. But it seemed almost like everyone had a shot. There were guys that caught a bunch of them. That kind of figured it
There
out.
were huge schools of fish. I mean, there were fish everywhere. There were fish off Newport. There were fish off Dana Point. There were fish off Laguna. There were fish off Long Point, up toward the west end, off Avalon, down off the east end, and tied to the slide. The 151. They were on the backside. I mean, there were pockets and pockets of fish. I don't know if we'll ever see that again in our lifetimes. I pray that they come back the same way they did last year. It is the single most intense, satisfying fish I've ever attempted to catch in my life.
I'm with you 100%. It's and the fact that we have a new fishery that's almost year round. The fish they are obviously here in bit better numbers in the summer and then into fall, winter. But, the idea that we can have that new fishery to catch something so exciting as a swordfish, that's so good eating as a swordfish.
Oh my God, they're delicious.
It's just incredible. And you're right. There was a lot of factors, from what I understand from the scientists. There's a lot of factors that made last year exceptional for the recreational deep dropping. I don't think every year will be as good as it was last year. I think some years it's just like marlin or tuna. There's going to be good years and there's going to be slow years. But man, what a scene! What an incredible!
What a fishery!
Yeah.
My favorite part of it is that you don't need to go out till like 9:30 or 10 in the morning. It's not like you have to get out there at the crack of dawn. And also, my favorite part is with Bobby Lee. If we're sitting out there on a beautiful afternoon on a drift and there's not a wisp of wind and he sees one whitecap and he goes, "Okay, it's time to go in." So it's when the wind starts blowing and you get pushed around too quick, you can't really fish it. We've tried to back down and hold the bait in place and against the wind, against the current. It's not as effective on those as it is on those perfect days when you're just out there on a beautiful, beautiful drift. And it's an amazing fishery. And I wish we knew more about it. I mean, your interviews with Chugi were just unbelievable. The science that's behind it. I've always been a big proponent of CPR, catch, photograph, and release. And I was really planning on releasing my first swordfish until we had a couple of steaks. And my wife Kim goes, we got to rethink this release thing on these swordfish. So they are probably the best eating fish in the ocean, especially when you get them up fresh. And I don't know, it's like, I think if I understood it right, they start breeding around 150 pounds. So, do we, how do we manage this fishery? It's right now the states, I guess it's 2 fish per person per day, no size limit.
Yeah, they're going to change that though, is my understanding.
I hope so.
It's going to be, I think they're changing it to 1 per angler, and then 1 per angler per day, but like no limit on amount per boat. There was some talk about trying to limit the amount per boat, but then
it's going to be interesting to see what
the good news
shakes out.
My core thing is like conservation, but
absolutely,
I'm reading like swordfish stocks are really healthy, and a lot of guys I've talked to have hit me up about tagging swordfish this year, and I actually just ordered 1,000 tags from the Billfish Foundation that I'm going to give out to guys that are going to be fishing this year, hopefully to get them to tag a few fish. And but the point being that I think we're fine with the recreational guys keeping a few to stock the freezers up.
Absolutely.
And then guys, if you catch a little pup, you get one of those like
80 to 100 pounds. Yeah.
81. Maybe if you already got a nice big one in the freezer, let that one go. I mean, it's to each his own. I would hope I would do
Yep.
that.
Yep.
I haven't been in the position to do that yet, but I'd like to think I would. And
Yeah, me too. Me too.
I mean, it's easier said than done. But I do honestly think that I talked to Brandon Hayward, who he runs the Bite Sport Fishing.
Mhm.
I think two or three boats, and
They had a phenomenal season.
caught a bunch. He caught a bunch last year, and he's got some clients that caught more than one and want to start putting some tags out. So that's great. It's
Yep. I think Bill DePriest did the same thing.
very encouraging to hear it from the guys like him that I respect, and that they want to do some tagging. And Bill DePriest, he hit me up about tagging. So guys I think guys will tag fish this year, assuming well, we got a lot of issues now before we can think
Yeah.
of swordfish season and tagging swordfish. But uh
Hey,
you
just let me clarify one thing. You said you ordered 1,000 tags.
Mhm.
They're not the satellite tags, are they?
No, just spaghetti
Okay.
tags
I
from
was gonna say, are you rich?
yeah. No, I got 1,000 Billfish Foundation spaghetti tags. So
Okay. Cool.
we give the Billfish Foundation does tag and release awards every year, and
Mm-hmm.
I asked them, when was the last time somebody turned in a tagged fish from the West Coast? And he was scratching his head, and he said, don't know if we've ever had one. And
Really?
I think it might have been like 9 years or something. So that'd be cool. Let's
Very.
somebody will from California, may just be one fish or two, will win the high West Coast swordfish tag and release angler. And Nick Stanzik, who we all know now, is out of Florida. I think he's won the last couple of years for the East Coast. So you can be up there next to Nick Stanzik with one or two tags against his 100 plus or whatever he does.
Mm-hmm.
Be a cool thing,
Yeah. The more science we can gain on these fish, and the sooner we can get that information to Chugi and let them analyze it, I think we're going to be in good shape. I liked what you said about. I think it's going to be up to each one of us to make that decision
Yeah,
when
sure.
the time comes. And I know, how many years, my entire life, it's been, I dreamed about catching a swordfish. So, I think you get one and you go, all right, I got one on my belt and we've got enough in the freezer. Let's let a couple of these go. And I've got some Barry Breitenberg shot some amazing, absolutely amazing footage of swordfish there with the booby trap guys in the Gulf. And I just stumbled across it last night, and I'm going to get that posted up of them releasing these fish. And it's the good news is they go straight back down to the bottom. So this one little fish was bleeding a little bit, but you could tell it stopped bleeding as it got down about 2 or 3 compression zones. So I think even if a fish is bleeding on the surface, these swordfish, unlike a marlin or a sailfish, they'll dive deep and they'll probably stop that compression real quick. So I think releasing these fish is going to be a very cool thing. I think we're going to probably. I mean, when we grew up, it was like nobody thought twice about hanging a marlin.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you caught a marlin, you hung it.
Yeah.
So, and I think today, the sword fishery, I think there's enough guys out here on the West Coast that have enough conscience and are experienced enough and are savvy enough as anglers that they're going to, enjoy the thrill of the catch and then celebrate the joy of a release too. So,
Yeah, I for sure. Like once guys have caught a few, I think we'll see more releases. It's still new. A lot of guys still haven't caught one yet. And I don't. I'm not saying that you should release your first one. Obviously, like they're great to eat. They're
too
sustainable.
damn good to eat.
And, do whatever you want to do. But if you're out there, you get on a good bite, it's late in the season and you've caught a bunch, maybe
Yeah,
let them go. So,
exactly.
but
You know,
obviously it's to each his own. I'm not here to preach on what guys
advocate one way or another. Nope.
their
No.
fish. As long as it doesn't go to waste, do whatever you want to do.
Take what you can use and use what you take.
Yeah, amen to that. So,
Pretty simple. Pretty simple.
so let's talk a little bit about the history of sport fishing, and
My God, you're hitting my hot button now.
yeah, what's the idea behind this project and how it came about, and kind of fill us in on what's going on.
Well, I've always been fascinated with old fishing equipment. I go to swap meets, garage sales, antique stores. I'm always hunting for old rods, reels, tackle hooks, lures, just tackle boxes, wooden tackle boxes. I mean, I'm fascinated by the old stuff. I just love it. It's what I grew up with. It's stuff I fished with when I was a kid before I even knew any different. And so I've been collecting vintage tackle for years. And and occasionally during the season, when the show was on the air, people would come to the Fred Hall show with a box of old 8mm home movies and said, "Look, my dad and my grandfather filmed these back in the 50s. I don't know what's on it, but it says fishing. I thought maybe you might be able to use it for something." So, over the years, a lot of incredible fishing films, old movies, 16. I even got some 35mm stuff from Lauren Gray's a granddaughter, Susan, Zane Gray's granddaughter. Um, and so we've been accumulating a lot of historical old films, and they've just been sitting in my office, sitting on the shelf here for years and years and years. And the other day I pulled some of them out, and they were just so brittle, Chase. They were like, "Oh my God, these films have just dried out. They're popcorn. I can't do anything with them." So I
Mm.
started to freak out and realize that there's an archive of one of a kind historical footage of primarily the West Coast fishing films, San Clemente Island, Catalina in the 30s and 40s. And if these films don't get preserved, if we're not able to digitize these and get them into a digital format, we're going to lose them forever. That's just a fact. Film has a celluloid element to it, and when that celluloid dries out, the film becomes brittle. And in the day I grew up, in film schools with 16, 35mm film, and you always check the gate, which meant when you got done with a scene, you always looked in the gate where the lens was behind the lens to make sure that the pull down craw hadn't caught a hair or something and left it in there. So you want to make sure the gate's clean. And film, the sprockets along the edges of the film, that's where a claw comes up, grabs it, and pulls the film down. And it's either 18 frames a second, 24 frames a second, high speed. You can get up to, slow motion. They go 60 frames a second. So that craw is pulling down frames as fast as you can grab them. And what happens when it gets brittle is that the hook, the claw goes into the sprocket of the film and then it rips it off. It just rips the film right through it because there's nothing there to hold it. So we've are working with a group up in Burbank called CD Creative, and they've come up with a roller system basically, where they actually pressure the film and they roll the film through the gate with rollers as opposed to a pull down craw. So and into the liquid gate, which now enables us to preserve these old films that before you couldn't run them through a projector because they'd rip apart. As soon as a couple of sprockets rip, the film's not moving, then it burns. The lens is so hot it just burns the film. I think you've probably all seen that in the past, in the movies, catch on, the film just melts. So our number one goal is to preserve the historical films that we have right here, right now. And we've got tens of thousands of feet of it, 8mm, Super 8, 16, 35. So that's our number one goal, is to get this film preserved. Once it's preserved, I've been working with the Catalina Island Company, the museum over there. They're extremely excited about this project. So, working with the museum, we'll get this stuff digitized. We'll have copies made. We'll give it to the museum for, prosperity. We'll give a copy to the IGFA. So they'll all have the raw footage. It'll be in the vaults of organizations that care about the history of our sport. Once we get all that done, then my goal is to do a film series of initially 9 9 chapters, if you will, based on the Ken Burns style of he did baseball, did the Civil War, he did one on national parks. He just takes these old stills and old movies and just puts so much life into the history of the sport. But the difference between what we're going to be doing is that my inspirations come from Bruce Brown and Riding Giants and Momentum Generation, where they take the energy and the spirit of the sport of surfing and inject that into the history of the sport. So it's told more through the eyes of the people that did it, that are still alive, or their sons and grandchildren, talking about, like, with you and your dad. I cannot wait to sit down with you and your brother and talk about your dad. And his passion and his love for the sport, and how you two have just embraced that and carrying on that legend. So to me, hearing the stories, I was talking to Ingrid Poole the other day, and she was telling me about one of the first boats that she and Bill Poole built down in San Diego. It was just in a vacant field down there somewhere. And she said, yeah, my sons had to take turns spending the night in the back of the pickup truck with a loaded shotgun and our Labrador Retriever to keep people from pilfering stuff off the boat. And then when they got the boat built, it was so tall, and Bill knew this when he built it, but he didn't tell anybody. They had to take telephone lines down to get the boat from the yard to the water. And hearing these little stories coming from someone like yourself or from Ingrid, it just breathes so much life into the Polaris Deluxe when it was splashed. And so my goal is to get the interviews with the people that are around that lived it. Don Hansen, guys like that, Rick Oppinger up in Marina Del Rey, and let them tell the story about their grandfathers and their dads and how they started the bait hauling industry and the first long range trips and how the long range fleets evolved and what's happened over in Avalon and what's happened with the Tuna Club and how that club has evolved and yet still holds traditions at the highest standards, the wooden rods and the linen line, and just let the people that created our sport tell the story in their own eyes and with their own words, and then be able to match the visuals to the stories. And that to me is the pilot. It's basically the birth of big game fishing, which took place right here in our backyard. I mean, it's categorically, chronologically fact. The first tuna that was ever caught over 100 pounds was caught in Avalon in, I think, 1896. And then Frederick Holder got his in 188 pounds in 1898. And the formation of the Tuna Club took place after that. And a couple of years later, the first marlin. A few years after that, on the first prototype star drag reel, Boschin caught the first broadbill swordfish. So marlin, tuna, and swordfish, first big game fish ever caught in the world, were caught right here in Southern California. So the world, as we know it today, as they know sport fishing, was born right here. It's in our home. It's our backyard. So we need to pay tribute to that. We need to honor that, and that's the pilot. And once we get the pilot in play, I think people will see how much can be told. I want to do the same thing for bass fishing, fly fishing. I think competition and freshwater and saltwater each should have their own chapters. I mean, look at the Bisbee. The largest single prize pool money in history was, with Jimmy Kingsmill and Bad Company down there, and with Lasley and those guys when they and I mean, there's big money. And look at the bass industry, what they've done with their stadium turnouts for the bass tournament. So, we do tournaments, we do competition, we talk about equipment, the evolution of rods, reels, line. We talk about platforms from the very first fishing boats into the ultra modern machines that we have today, electronics, all the techniques that are available to us today. I want to do a whole chapter on women of sport fishing. And then we want to wrap it up with a chapter on the conservation and the future of sport fishing. So I think each one of those 9 chapters will be a full hour and a half, if we can get it down to that. And I think each one of those chapters then could be an entire series on itself. Yeah. I mean, I have a hard time thinking we can get the birth of big game fishing done in an hour and a half.
Yeah, I mean the amount of information and in history is mind-boggling. But you and I are lucky because we're members of the Tuna Club, and every time you walk inside that building, you're in the museum of of sport
You're
fishing.
you're
I mean, it's
you're the birthplace of sport fishing. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I
it's like
get chills just talking about it.
right. It's like you're in like a hollowed. It's it and it just you can feel the history in there, and
It permeates through the walls.
right.
Permeates.
I hate the hyperbole, but it is really a special place. And one of the things that's so interesting is when you look back in a lot of that old video, or you see some old photos and stuff, is we've come a long, long ways in terms of fishing equipment and technology, but the techniques haven't changed very much. I mean,
Nope.
it's one of the a great example is with the bluefin. Our Pacific bluefin fishing is with the kite and the flying fish. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
those guys invented that method in like what, like
1908. Yep.
1908?
1908. George Farnsworth was flying the first kite, and he had he was a boatman. He
Yeah.
ran a charter boat. They were known as boatmen, and he had his passengers swear to secrecy that they wouldn't say a word about it. And for 2 years, it was a secret that Farnsworth was flying a kite. And then on 4th of July in 2011, the word was out, and he flew the kite through Avalon.
That's hilarious. But you know what I mean? It's like here we are in 2020. We have
Still flying a kite. Yep.
we have all this space age technology, and yet the best way to trick a bluefin tuna into eating your hook is the same exact method that they used over 100 years ago. It's incredible.
100 years ago. Yep. I know.
Yeah.
100 years, 120 years ago, they were using the same techniques.
Yeah, we haven't come up with a better way to do it. I mean, it's when we have all these other things at our disposal, like sonar and depth finders and all stuff, but that's still the best way to catch them. And it's really cool, and it's just a testament to those guys like George Farnsworth and Mexican Joe and all those old
Yep.
boatmen in Avalon that they came up with these methods that are timeless. And it's
Yep.
I don't think a lot of people know that. And
I don't think the story's ever been told, and that's what I want to try and do, Chase, is tell that story.
right. I think
I think it needs to be told.
if you're really into fishing and you consider yourself like somebody that respects fishing
The sport. Yep.
and the sport, it part of it is knowing the history and knowing it's no different than like golf and any other sport. Like they hang those guys up on a pedestal, like Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus in golf, and Babe Ruth, and all those guys in baseball. We don't know all the heroes of fishing, and those stories should be told. I mean, they're you and I know a lot of the stories, and they're incredible.
Well, and fishing is such an individual sport. We're not gathered around 100,000 people with an oval track or some lines, a round ball, and some sticks. It's an individual sport. It's participatory by individuals that love their individualism. We get out in the water because we love being on the water. It's an excuse for guys to get together to go do something. I wouldn't call you and say, "Hey, Chase, let's go for a walk on the beach."
Yeah.
It's like, "Hey, let's go fish the sea bass." We're there.
Yeah.
So fishing is an excuse for men to get together to be a part of nature in a way that just is unparalleled. So, all these other sports have their history's been pretty well documented throughout time. I think fishing's the one sport that's lacked any real true documentary series, and I'm just thrilled to death about doing it.
Like you hit the nail on the head for me. To be out fishing and growing up on Catalina Island and fishing the backside of Catalina mainly, and the various banks around the island, like to me, being out on the ocean is first and paramount, and then catching a fish is a bonus. Just fishing, being out, being in the ocean, being amongst the marine life, and the elements, and it's just there's something about it that just goes back to our our
most primal instincts.
Our primal instincts, and it's just once you like, you get a taste of it, it's hard not to be hooked for the rest of your life. And, catching a fish for me is a bonus. Obviously that's like, while, you're out there trying to do, but, if you catch a fish, epic. But
But
if you don't,
it's the
either
experience
way,
of
it's still
being on the
fun.
water. Yep.
Yeah. And I think, when guys, when you finally wrap your head around that part of it, um, you know, it makes fishing a lot more fun, because it's not about the result. It's just about being out there and being with your buddies,
Yep.
uh, you know, the banter and the camaraderie, and
Exactly, Chase. It's about the experience, not
100%.
the result.
So,
Yep.
and then that brings us full circle to where we are right now in April, mid-April, and the idea that our fishing season is going to be drastically changed is a very distinct possibility. I mean, there was a meeting this past week to consider doing some closures. From what I understand, it's mainly some of the trout openers and freshwater stuff. But word got out that they may be closing down, all fishing. And man, people were not all too happy to hear about that. And I think there is going to be some sort of guidelines for fishing this summer in saltwater. I think like something like the party boats or sport boats are maybe really affected by it, and not. And
Brutally so. Brutally so.
I don't know about private boaters, how they'll regulate it, but I think it's I think it's not crazy to imagine this is going to be a fishing season unlike any other in terms of what goes on.
Yeah, it's unprecedented what we're experiencing right now. That's for sure. I mean, it's unlike anything any of us have ever known in our lives. And hopefully, hopefully everybody stays hunkered down, and this thing passes through us, and we get it wired up, and we can get back on the water. But I mean, launch ramps are closed. A friend of mine lives in Oregon. If your boat's not in the water, you can't get it in the water, and 90% of those boats are trailer boats.
Hmm.
So all the launch ramps are closed in Oregon. Um, I don't know about further up the coast, but it's it is going to be interesting to see what happens. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I never would have imagined that this day would come, but the fact that they've already outlawed surfing here in California, which if you take it at face value, you think, God, surfing, like
how
what
more independent can you be?
individualistic sport, and guys are spread out. But I've heard lots of good arguments on both sides of it, but the point being that uh, if they can outlaw surfing, there's no question they could outlaw fishing if that's the route they wanted to take. I guess they're gonna do another meeting this week to decide what's going on with that. But I sure hope, selfishly, and for all my fishing friends, that they don't try to take that away. I mean, if they do, it is what it is. But we'll see, But it's crazy that that's even on the table, I guess, at this point. But it could be weird. It'd be really weird, if somebody goes out there in a spotter plane or something and filming those bluefin foaming off the end of Catalina. We're not allowed to fish. I think guys might, that might be the breaking point for the social distancing deal.
Yeah, social quarantining. Yeah, I do too, especially on a private boat. You know,
Yeah,
I my heart goes out to the sport guys. They're just high and dry right now, and they're not going to open that up until it's clear. So private boaters might have a little different shot at it. And I mean, I know they've closed. You made a point a couple of weeks ago, and Laguna Beach, Main Beach, looked like it was the 4th of July.
it did.
It was like,
It
what
did.
is wrong with you people?
I
Yeah. So, I mean, I was pissed when they closed the beaches, and I was pissed when they closed our hiking trails. But I'm still hiking.
Yeah.
But you know, and I think the same thing will probably, if somebody they somebody, I don't know what would happen if somebody said I can't take my boat out and go fishing. That's going to be that's good. That's going to be an interesting situation. I hope it never happens.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't happen either. But it just takes a few people to ruin it for everyone. I mean, that was the deal with in town in Laguna here. We got they said to socially distance, and everyone thought, oh, I'll be the only person at the beach. Well, when 1,000 people all have the same idea and everyone shows up at the beach and they're like, well, we're here now. I drove all the way here. Might as well go for a walk. And then there you go. You got, 4th of July.
There were I don't know how many thousands of people are down at Main Beach a couple weeks ago, but maybe it was a little longer than that. Was it 3 weeks, 4 weeks ago? But it was, guys had their shirts off. The basketball courts had been, taped off. They were playing basketball. They were sweating all over everything. And it was like, are you guys out of your minds? You're nuts.
Yeah.
So, what's interesting? We live out here in the canyon, and traffic in the canyon. I don't know how many tens of thousands of cars go through here every day. The canyon has virtually come to a crawl. I mean, after dark, there's not a car on the Laguna Canyon Road.
Really?
One car every couple of minutes, maybe, after dark. During the day, there's workers that are going back and forth, a lot of pickup trucks and stuff. So, but it's just amazing how well I think we have responded as a society. And I got to tip my hat to us because, with a little bit I've read about it, the pandemic back in 1918, 1908 or something, that flu hit.
Yeah, flu.
New York, Boston, Philadelphia, the big metropolises, they didn't shut down. They didn't shut down until it was too late, and they got hit hard. So I think California, we were fortunate enough to get an early shutdown on this thing. So hopefully it'll pay off here in the next couple of months, and we can all get back out on the water and enjoy a great, August, September.
Absolutely. And, let's just hope for the best. And obviously, hearts go out to anyone that's been affected by anyone sick. I know being out here in California it's we're in a different scene, but from everything I understand, the folks that live in New York City, it's pretty scary out there, and
very scary.
We've been lucky in California, so I don't think maybe people don't take it quite as serious, but I think as long as we maintain what we're on, the trajectory we're on, we may be okay. But appreciate you, buddy.
Oh man, you too, Chase. Thank you for everything. Thank you for everything you're doing, everything you've done.
Yeah, you too, man. And take care of yourself. Stay hunkered down. I'm glad you're staying busy, getting this old footage onto YouTube for people like me to enjoy. And
I'm glad you're enjoying it.
When I'm locked in the house here with a 3-year-old boy that is bouncing off the wall. So at the end of the day, when put him down to bed, and it's nice to flip on some fishing and just kind of to zone out and dream of being back out there again soon.
It's what we do, man. It's what we do as fishermen anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for everything you do, Mike. And hey, everybody, check out his YouTube channel. What is that? Inside Sportfishing?
Yep, Inside Sportfishing on YouTube. So it's check it out. Make a comment, like the show. Thank you for that appreciation and support on that end of it. And I'm glad to hear you guys are liking that retro stuff, because it's fun for me to look at it again, and I guess it's been pretty enjoyable for a lot of other guys too. So I'll keep working on posting up new stuff. And
awesome.
Thank you, Chase, for your support on this history of sport fishing too. I couldn't be doing it without you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thrilled about it, and good talking to you. And hopefully I'll see you soon. Once we're allowed to get outside the house.
See you on the porch.
All right, buddy. Take care.
All right.